Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're doing some more shooting with the 280 Ackley. This is my Browning X-Bolt, and in 2 months I will be loaded up and driving out to Idaho for a mule deer and black bear hunt. So I really need to get my hunting load dialed down. Previously, I have used the 145 grain Barnes LRX, and it's had some pretty good accuracy. In the last video, I shot 2 5-shot groups with my old load using H4831, and after the barrel was re-seasoned with this bullet, it shot a pretty good group, about an MOA. However, H4831 shortcut, as I have known for a couple of years now, is probably not the ideal powder for 280 Ackley. Powders that I really should be focusing on more are Vitivory N555 or N550 or maybe 560. And H4350. I have got 2 pounds of N555 that I bought specifically for this test, and we are going to try to get a good load in the 280 Ackley with that. The other new component for today is some brand new Peterson brass. I bought this stuff quite a while ago, and here is the major mistake that I made. So I bought 50 pieces. Later on, it became more available. I had placed a back order with Graphs, and I got 100 more pieces of the same lot number. Well, I realized that I didn't need 150 pieces of 280 Ackley brass, especially since I already had 100 pieces of Nosler brass, so I sold off a box of 50. Well, the mistake I made is that I sold one of the 2 boxes of the same lot number. So I've got 2 boxes of 50 pieces each of Peterson brass, both in different lot numbers. It's not really going to matter. We're only going to be using 50 pieces for this test and this hunt anyway, so I'm not super worried about that. When I go to open the other box, I'll test it for case volume and see if the cases weigh the same and if they hold the same number of grains of water. I kind of think they're going to, but just for this test, we're just going to be using 1 box. The Nosler brass that I had been using had an internal case volume of 74 grains of water. This Peterson brass measured in at 72.5. So a grain and a half less water capacity, not a huge difference, but it did change things in GRT just a little bit. The first thing we're going to do is a basic pressure test. I have 7 rounds loaded up here from 55 grains of N555 all the way to 58 grains in half grain increments. I should probably go 0.3 or 0.4, but half grain is what I'm going to use. If you saw in the last video, this bullet has the potential to shoot really well, but currently the extreme spread over 10 shots is something like 50 feet per second with the 4831 shortcut load I had, and I'm looking for a little more consistency than that, and I think we're probably going to get it out of N555. I am using a set of Redding reloading dies. If the last 280 Ackley video that you saw on the channel was from 2022-ish, you'll remember I was having a lot of trouble with the sizing die. Redding exchanged that sizing die for a brand new one, and I don't have any more trouble. I've loaded some really good ammo and shot some really good groups with this rifle using that new sizing die, and everything is good there. I think that's all I have to get out of the way for now. Let's get out to the range, shoot this pressure test, and then we'll get into loading for some groups. I am going to be aiming for a target down there, and I've got a target camera set up, but the main goal, of course, is not to see how accurate it is, though I do kind of want to see how the loads move around and what the point of impact consistency looks like, that sort of thing. I'm not extremely worried about that, but I'm going to be trying to hold as good as I can on the targets down there. We're going to start out at 55 grains. I do have the predicted velocities written down here, so it'll be interesting to see how close we are to that. At 55 grains, the GRT predicted speed is 2,906 feet per second. I'm going to be writing things down as we go along. If you watched the last video and saw the point of impacts, it's going to be a little bit different today. I've moved the reticle 1 MOA to the left. .2870, so we're off 36 feet per second. 55.5. Predicted 2932. Actual of 2877. 56. Oh, I should be looking at the brass, I guess. Absolutely nothing. 2819, or 2918, predicted of 2959. These predicted are at 80 degrees Fahrenheit. It's right at that right now. Though the ammo has been inside the shop, that's at 74 degrees. 56.5. 2975. Oh, that was quite the jump. The predicted on that was 2985, so we're closing in on what the predicted value was. For the last three, I'm going to give the barrel a second to cool down. When I plugged that in, a big puff of smoke came out the end of the suppressor there. That was kind of funny. Tell you what, though, the group so far is pretty promising. Granted, these are 4 different charge weights. The seating depth that I went with is 3.330 inches. That is a seating depth that I chose from my previous testing with this bullet. I did not take very good notes. Thankfully, I wrote down what the load was, but I didn't take super good notes when I was working on this load. I kind of sped through it, and I shouldn't have done that. I should have taken way better notes. I'm gonna make sure I do that this time around, but I didn't take as good a notes as I should, and I don't remember why I chose that seating depth, but I figured it's as good a place as any to start. I think Barnes lists 3.3 inches even, and I know I measured distance to the lands and all that, and I'm going to have to do it again since I didn't write any of that down, at least on anything in this book. But yeah, that's the seating depth for now, though that may change later. All right, we've got 57 grains, predicted velocity of 3011. Tell you what, I could shoot this 280 Ackley all day long and my shoulder would not care. It shoots phenomenally well. The recoil impulse is certainly not painful. All right, at that 57 grain load, we had 2994. We're now 17 feet per second off the predicted value. And we've got the tiniest change in color where the ejector was. Nothing I'm worried about whatsoever. The primer still has nice round edges, no cratering whatsoever. Looks great, other than that tiny, tiny little spot. We'll go 57.5. There we're up over 3,000. We're at 3016. Same thing there for that. Yep, same little bit of ejector circle, but nothing, certainly nothing raised, nothing I can feel with my finger. All right, last shot here, 58 grains. Oh, shouldn't let it sit in the barrel too long. All right, I torqued the gun on that shot for sure and threw that shot high. But we got 3046 for a velocity there. Looks like 17 feet per second slower than predicted. But not bad at all. And same exact thing on the brass. Actually, I'm having a really hard time finding that ejector lightness. There it is. Yeah, just barely there, and I cannot feel it with my finger. Yeah, let's shoot some groups. All right, everybody. It's the next day. It's even hotter than it was during the hot part of yesterday. But thankfully, I've got the canopy up and it makes things much nicer. We are shooting 3-shot groups now with the 145 grain LRX. I've had the ammo outside for about 20 minutes now, so it's had time to acclimate. Not in the sun, but here on the bench in the shade. We're going to be shooting a little bit smaller increments this time. I'm shooting 3/10 increments from 57.1 grains up to 58.3. The last time we stopped at 58.0 for the 1-shot pressure test, and we weren't hitting quite the velocities that we should. We were off by about 20-ish feet per second. So with that 3/10 of a grain increase, we should be getting just a little bit closer, and we'll see what that pressure does when we get there, but I'm not too worried about it. The target is down there at 100 yards, and I'm going to be taking my time today. We're going to take a at least a 5-minute break between each 3-shot group, put the chamber cooler in, and yeah, we will see how things go. I've got 5 groups here to shoot today, so this is going to take a little while. I'm just going to settle in and shoot carefully. We will be single feeding. There's not really much of a point in feeding off the magazine. Starting on the upper left. You can probably tell, but there is quite a bit of breeze today. I'm probably going to have to get some weights for the corner of my canopy here. Starting off at 29.93, which is 1 foot per second difference than the last shot at approximately this charge weight. Good. Had to stop and take off that sidewall. It was putting way too much lateral load on the tent legs. All right, we got an average of 29.99, extreme spread of 9.6, standard deviation of 4.2. 5-minute cooldown. Guys, if you haven't yet, make sure you are subscribed to the channel. That helps me out a lot. Also give the video a thumbs up and put a comment down below with your experiences, comments, whatever you got. Also today, I've learned a few new things. First of all, the Garmin Zero chronograph can work off of a power bank, so you can use it and charge it at the same time, which is great. Mine had very low battery from shooting yesterday evening, and I hadn't charged it in a couple of shooting sessions, and I thought I was dead in the water this morning, but turns out I can just put my power bank there and charge off of that, so that's slick. Also, another thing that I have been using that I really like is this chamber cooler. Now, I made this one myself, and it is an $8 little blower fan off of Amazon, and a 3D printed housing. The file for it was on, I think it was Thingiverse or Printables, I can't remember which one. But I have been using it and it works great. Doesn't have a ton of power output. I would probably go with a little bit different design in the future. But that is slick too. And it's also running off of a power bank. It came with the cord, speed controller, and everything. The fan did. So yeah, for probably a total of $9, I've got a functional chamber cooler. And it actually does move air through the barrel, which is nice. It probably doesn't move nearly as much air as one of the commercial ones, but for what I'm doing, it does the job, and yeah, barrel's cooled back down. So we will shut that off and keep shooting. 57.4. That one, my follow through was not great, and you saw my shoulder was out here instead of square with it. 3017, again, right in line with what we were getting yesterday. With a charge that was just 1/10 of a grain different. If I didn't mention, it's currently 85 degrees and about 70% humidity. All right, the gun keeps torquing as it comes back, and I need to fix that somehow. think maybe yesterday I was a little bit further forward on the rest. Yeah, it's got a little bit wider base. My rest still has a little wobble to it, which I need to figure out how to solve. That was 3017 for an average. 38.9 extreme spread. And a standard deviation of 15.9. Which, 3 shots standard deviation doesn't really mean much. All right, we are at 57.7 grains of N555. That torqued way to the side. I have to figure something out here. Whatever I had going on yesterday, I wasn't getting this. I would be shooting this prone if my land allowed it. With the slope I've got on this rise in front of me, I have to be at an elevated position to shoot the target and have a backstop. That was a little bit better. There we go. That felt good. All right, average of 30.29, extreme spread of 13.4, standard deviation of 6.1. We are on to 58 grains and the bottom left target. That one jumps us up to 3071. Brass looks the same as it did yesterday. Tiny circle, but nothing that I can actually feel with a fingernail. And that one was also 3071. The middle was 3040 something. So we got an average of 3063, extreme spread of 23.8, standard deviation of 11. And I can't tell, but it looks like all 3 of those went into the same hole. Unless there's one out on the edge of the circle, but I can't quite tell. I've actually been given these last few groups 7 to 8 minutes to cool down. And yeah, the barrel's nice and cool again. This is the last group here, 58.3 grains. I have not shot this high yet, so we'll see what it does. Unfortunately, that last group had a shot that was outside the group, but it happens. Still printing about a minute. 3051. I'm not finding anything on the brass there. Okay, there I really have to hunt for it, but I could see the circle we were getting before. I don't even know if it would show up on the camera. All right, about the same kind of group there. Average of 3053, extreme spread of 20.8, standard deviation of 8.6. Not terrible. I can live with 20s extreme spreads. I'm going to get back to the bench and measure those groups. All right, I'm gonna put a picture of that target with the measurements on it up on the screen here. That first group at 57.1 grains was 0.576 inches. The next was 0.760, 0.750, 0.910, and then 1.01 there at the 58.3 grain load. The extreme spread was the smallest for the 57.7 grain load. It was kind of right in the middle of a consistent area in point of impact. And it had a pretty decent group there at 3/4 of an inch. So before we do any more testing or try different powders or anything, I want to shoot a 10-shot group with that 57.7 grain load and see what it does. If I get under 1.1 or 1.2, we may just stick with that load. Of course, depending on how the numbers look. But based on that 3-shot group alone, which I know is not a lot, I want to do a little bit more testing with that load. So I've got 10 rounds loaded up here at 57.7 grains, and we're just going to shoot at that bottom right-hand target for a group. I'm going to be trying to settle in like I was for those last couple of groups that I felt really good about, and I'm going to be paying as much attention as I can. This rifle, just because of the shape of the fore end, you can see it twists all around here super easily, and I wish that weren't the case, but it is, and it makes it just a little bit difficult to hold on to for groups. When I am able to hold things like I should, it seems to shoot pretty well, so we'll see what I can do here. It's been over an hour. I've had lunch. The gun is all the way back to cool. I'm gonna just, double check the suppressor is good and tight. I finished charging the chronograph up, so it's all set. All right, I had to go in and get an Allen key to tighten up this rest, and that made it a whole lot better. I forgot that there was a screw under this pad to tighten up the top, because it didn't always rattle like that. So that's good. Got that sorted out. That's more stable for sure, more what I'm used to. Yeah, that's so much more stable. I don't know why I didn't do that earlier. The tightening that bolt. Kind of forgot it was there. Well, that's a good start. Barrel's getting hot. Let's let it cool. Gun is definitely traveling much more straight back and forth, which is good. All right, well, besides one shot there, I'm gonna call that excellent. Like, that is what I was hoping for right there. Yeah, that's absolutely fantastic. I'm gonna have to measure that, but I think extreme spread on that group is gonna be like 1.2 with 9 of them into like 0.8. That's good stuff. I think, velocity on that one, average was 30.25 with an extreme spread of 40 feet per second, which is not great. It's really not. I wish that were tighter. Standard deviation of 11.9. Most of the shots were in the 30-20s. There were a couple that were around 3,000 feet per second, and there was like 1 or 2 shots that were up to 30-40. But most of those shots were in the 30-20s. I wonder, so I threw all those charges with my Chargemaster Light. I wonder if hand trickling would do any different, or, you know, a better powder scale. Not sure about that, but that is something I can live with. I think when I was figuring for this last time, there was an extreme spread of 50 to 60 feet per second and not quite as good accuracy. And I figured that that was good for a difference of 2 inches in vertical point of impact at 500 yards. Now, that calculation may have been wrong then, and I need to probably refigure that. But, yeah, 40 feet per second extreme spread, it's not great. I wish it were 20, but I'm not going to worry about that too much. I think that's all I have for out here at the range. Let's get back to the bench and wrap things up. All right, so besides the extreme spread of the velocity of that group, it shot exactly what I was hoping for. Yeah, it would have been nicer if this one shot hadn't been outside the group, but even with that one shot, it was a 10-shot group of 1.260 inches, and the 9 shots in the main group here are 0.89 inches. I'm gonna call that satisfactory. I am not quite done testing this. I'm going to probably load up a group to hand trickle and retest. I did, since I finished shooting the last part of the video, I ordered and had delivered 100 more of the 145 grain LRX bullets. So I've got those plus most of a box left of the other. So I've got plenty of bullets. I plan to take 50 loaded rounds at least, if not more, with me out to Idaho. So I've got plenty to do some more playing around. I'm gonna do some positional shooting with this load and just kind of get used to the drop and everything out at further distance. Anyway, we're gonna do that all later. For now, this is gonna work. I mentioned the extreme spread. It was 40.6 feet per second. Average of 30.26, extreme spread of 40.6, and a standard deviation of 11.9 feet per second. That is 10 feet per second better on the extreme spread than the last group. Actually, I think about 14 feet per second better than the last time I shot the H4831 load. So it is an improvement, just not as much as I had hoped. I did mention in the beginning of the video that H4350 would be one to test. Doing some more calculations, it would put me at like 88 to 92-ish% case fill, which might be fine. I will probably test it in the future just to see if it works better, but I don't know that I have the time right now to do that. A couple weeks has passed since I shot the shooting session of this video, and I now just have a little over 2 weeks before I fly out to Idaho to scout. So time is going quick and I've got lots more to do. But I think this load is gonna get the job done for now. Hopefully I didn't ramble too much about that and you guys understood where I was going. Do make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Check out my Patreon page if you feel like supporting the video making that I do. And thank you all so much for watching. Have a good one.